Learn English through stories C40 PDF. Adopted and modified by Kulwant Singh Sandhu. Content 1. Mini stories 4. 2. Picture dictionary page. 1. Mini stories 4. By Emma Hill. Story 15. There is not enough petrol in the world for everybody now, and each year there is less, so what are we going to do when it finishes? Perhaps we will go back to horses and carriages and bicycles. In the Second World War, some people did not use petrol in their cars. They made gas from wood and plants instead, and then they put it in big bags on top of their cars. The cars did not go fast, but it was better than nothing. But we cannot cut down all our trees to make gas. We need them for other things too. Besides gas, we can also use electricity for our cars, but first we must make the electricity. Some countries have coal and they make electricity with that, but we will not always have coal. Other countries have big, strong rivers, and these turn turbines and make electricity more easily and cheaply. We are also able to get power from the tides. We put turbines in the mouth of a river. Then, when the tide comes up, it turns the turbines, and when it runs back towards the sea, it turns them again. And we know that the waves of the sea can also turn turbines when they go up and down. Which of all these things will make our electricity in the year 2000? Story 16. Sally was 19 years old. She had always lived with her parents, but now the time had come for her to go to university in another part of the country, to study to be a doctor. Her mother was very sad about this, and she was also afraid because she loved her daughter very much, and she thought, my little girl will be alone for the first time in her life, she won't know anybody, there will be nobody to look after her, and perhaps she will have trouble, or she will be very sad because she isn't with us. Sally said goodbye to her father and to her cat, and promised to telephone every week. Then her mother took her to the university by train. When they said goodbye, her mother cried, and on the way back home she cried again. Then every week Sally kept her promise and telephoned. They talked for several minutes, and Sally was always very happy and never said that she missed her parents. Her mother was not glad about this. She thought, perhaps she's finding the university nicer than her home. But then some holidays were getting near. That week, when Sally telephoned her parents, she said, the students who live here were talking yesterday evening and they said, we're very happy that we're going to return home again soon for a few days. Sally's mother was very glad that the students had said this. She must really miss us, she thought. Then she said, and did you say that too? Oh yes, Sally answered. We all said that it's easy to speak to our parents on the telephone every week when we're away, but we really miss our pets. Story 17. Derek was a little boy. He lived with his parents in a small house in a town. They did not have a big garden. Derek liked animals very much. One day he said to his father, I've got a little money, Daddy, can I buy a pony please? But his father answered, no Derek, we can't have a pony in the garden because it's too small and we haven't got a field. People who keep ponies in small gardens without a field are unkind, ponies need a lot of space. Derek did not want to be unkind to a pony, so he did not ask his father again. But then his father got a job in another place, and he and his family left their small house in the town and went and lived in a bigger house in the country. It had a nice garden and a field, and Derek was very happy. There was a farm near their new house, and there were horses, cows, and a few sheep there. Derek went to see them every day. He was 5 years old now, and he began to think of a pony again. My birthday is next month, he thought. Perhaps Daddy will buy me a pony then. After a little time, he began to talk about ponies to his parents again. Then his birthday came. His parents gave him a few nice presents, but there was no pony. Derek was sad. But then suddenly his Uncle Tom arrived. He was a farmer and he had a big pony with him. Hello Derek, Uncle Tom said, happy birthday, this is your birthday present from me and Aunt Mary. Derek was a little afraid because the pony was very big. He looked at it for a few minutes and then he said to his uncle, is he for me or am I for him? Story 18. When Mr. Holland was a young man, he played a lot of football, and he had always been thin and very strong. But then he worked in an office for many years, and he drove to work in a car, so when he was 40, he was fat and very soft, and he did not wish to get fatter and softer every year. One day one of his friends said to him, "Would you like to be thinner, Fred?" "Of course I would," Mr. Holland answered. "Well," his friend said, "stop going to your office by car and get a bicycle." Mr. Holland had not ridden a bicycle for many years. "It's very hard to learn to ride a bicycle again at your age," his wife said. But it was not too hard for Mr. Holland to do. He usually sat in his living room and read the newspaper in the evening, but he bought a bicycle for his birthday and practiced riding that every evening instead. He hoped that it would help him to get thinner, and he got a lot of pleasure from it. He found little roads which were not really very narrow, but were too narrow for cars, and there he got away from the nasty noises of the city, which were becoming too much for him. They were not really very loud, but they were too loud for Mr. Holland. Then he began to go to his office on his bicycle. Sometimes all the cars stopped at a red light, and he went past them to the front because his bicycle was narrow. Then he was very happy. Yesterday he stopped at a red light, and a man came up behind him on another bicycle. He stopped too and said to Mr. Holland, "Have the police taken your driving license away too?" Story 19. Mary Williams was a clever young lady. She lived alone and had a very important business job in a big company. She worked very hard in it. She was never absent, she always arrived at her office early and left late, and she often took reports home with her to read. At weekends she seldom went anywhere, and she was always working then too. Jill Thomas was a friend of Mary's. In fact, she was Mary's best friend. They had gone to the same school, and both of them were clever women, but Jill was married, and she did not want to get a job. "I'm quite happy at home with Len," she always said. "I don't want to be too busy to have fun." Jill and Len liked walking very much, and nearly every weekend they went to the mountains and walked there. They also liked dancing very much, and they often went out in the evening and danced till the early hours of the next morning. And when they had their holidays, they climbed all the mountains one by one, and swam and sailed on the lake and danced nearly all the time. One year Jill said to Mary, "Would you like to have a holiday with us this year, Mary?" Mary was very happy, so Jill and Mary and Len had 2 weeks together. Mary enjoyed her holiday, but she was very tired after they had climbed all the mountains and swum every day and danced every night. The next summer, Jill offered to take Mary on their holiday again. "Thank you very much," answered Mary, "but I'm going to be quite honest with you. I'm sorry that I can't come, because I've worked a lot this year and I'm tired, but I don't need a holiday, I need a rest." Story 20. Mr. Robinson died, and after that only Mrs. Robinson lived in their small house. She was very old. Her son John lived with his wife and child in another street, and he often said to his mother, "You must come and live with us," but she always answered, "No, I'm very happy in my little house and I don't want to leave it." At 8 o'clock one morning the old woman telephoned her son and said, "Please come to my house." Then she put the phone down. John's wife said, "Who was that?" "It was Mother," he answered. "What did she want?" "She wants me, perhaps she's ill, I'll take the car and go to work from her house." He took his car out and drove to his mother's house quickly. When the old woman opened the door, her son said, "What's the matter, Mother?" "Come in," she answered. "There's a thief in one of my cupboards." "A thief in one of your cupboards?" said John. "When did you find him?" "I heard noises in a cupboard yesterday evening," she answered. "Which one?" John asked quietly. They were in the dining room now. "That one," the old woman answered. "Why didn't you telephone me then?" John asked. "Because it was late and I didn't want to trouble you," she answered. "But the thief hasn't stayed in the cupboard all night, has he?" asked John. "Oh yes, he has," the old woman answered. "I nailed the door up and then I went to bed." Story 21. While Bill was still at school, he used to earn some money by delivering newspapers, but when he left school, he was ready to get himself a proper job. "I'll work in a bank," he said to himself, "because my uncle has always worked in one." He went to his aunt and said, "I think that the work is easy, Uncle Bob can do it, so can I." His aunt smiled, but did not say anything. When Bill's uncle came home that evening, his wife told him that Bill wanted to work in a bank, and his uncle said, "That's a good idea, but there are no jobs in my bank just now." So Bill went to several other banks and asked for a job, and in the end he got one. "You may work here for a month," the manager said, "and if you're good enough, you can stay after that. You'll work with Mr. Unwin for the first month. He'll take you round and train you and report to me about you." Mr. Unwin was one of the other clerks in the bank, and he had been there for many years. He took Bill round the bank, and Bill learned a lot of things from him. Some of these lessons were not easy. Then one day Mr. Unwin gave Bill some £1 notes. "Count these," he ordered him. "There ought to be 100 there. If there aren't, tell me, and try not to make any mistakes." Bill sat down by Mr. Unwin and began to count the notes. But he was lazy, and when he had counted half of them, he became tired. 51, 52, 53, he said, and then he stopped, looked at Mr. Unwin, and pointed at the notes. "Well," he said, "if they're correct up to here, they'll all be correct, won't they?" 2. Picture dictionary page.